Additional security measures are put in place after the President arrives. In closing, I would like to suggest Congress consider expanding the statutory authority of the Secret Service to ensure the agency can make the most informed decisions possible. The United States is facing a hyper-dynamic threat environment, and the Secret Service must be certain it is receiving all relevant threat information. The failure of most Secret Service personnel in Butler to be informed about the specific threat facing former President Trump stands out. Currently, there is no statutory requirement mandating federal, state, and local agencies must report to the Secret Service information concerning threats against the President or other protectees. There are agreements in place and memorandum of understanding to allow the transfer of such information, but no legal mandate to do so. In my opinion, the law must clearly state such information must be immediately provided to the Secret Service to take whatever steps it deems necessary to conduct an investigation and follow-up. For example, the FBI has exclusive jurisdiction to investigate a conspiracy to assault or kill the President before the attack takes place. Since the Secret Service is responsible for protecting the President, it should be part of all such threat investigations so it can take appropriate steps to prevent an assassination. And finally, the FBI has authority under current law to seek the assistance of any federal, state, or local agency, including the military, to help investigate an assassination or assassination attempt after the fact. I believe the Secret Service should have similar authority to call for such assistance to prevent an assassination or assassination attempt. That concludes my statement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. I now recognize Dr. Goldsmith for his 5-minute opening remarks. Now, the witness is going to be testifying over the phone, right? Okay. Dr. Goldsmith, please.
Good morning, Chairman Kelly, Ranking Member Crow, and distinguished members of the task force. My name is Dr. Ariel Goldschmidt. I'm the Chief Medical Examiner for Allegheny County, Pennsylvania. On July 13, 2024, after the attempted assassination of former President Trump, I, through my staff, reached out to the Butler County coroner, Bill Young, to offer our assistance if needed. Later that night, our assistance was accepted by Butler County, and arrangements were made to transport the bodies of Thomas Matthew Crooks and victim Corey Dean Comparator to our office. Our office wasn't involved in the transportation of the decedents. However, once they were transported to our office, the required chain of custody work was processed. The following morning, July 14 at 9:15 a.m., I began Mr. Crooks' autopsy with the assistance of other technicians named in my report. Prior to the autopsy, the body was x-rayed. Major handprints were obtained by the FBI Major Incident Program Manager, Brian Johnson, and gunshot residue test samples were collected by autopsy technician Lauren Coran. My involvement in the case was limited to the autopsy, in which I determined that Thomas Crooks died as a result of a high-velocity gunshot wound to the head with an entrance wound of the left upper lip. I had no reports from or involvement in the investigation into Mr. Crooks' motives or actions, crime scene evidence, or other outside evidence as part of my work. Items of evidentiary value collected during the autopsy were transferred to the custody of the FBI. Once I received the results of toxicology testing, which was performed by our laboratory, I completed a written autopsy report, which was signed August 5th and delivered to Butler County. Our office's involvement in the case concluded on July 22nd, 2024, when Mr. Crooks' body was released to a funeral home pursuant to the directives of the Butler County coroner.
Thank you, Doctor. Now we're going to move to member questions under the 5-minute rule, and I'm going to recognize myself for 5 minutes of questions. First, we're going to show a video to get things started. The footage you are about to see is from this dash cam of a Pennsylvania State Police patrol car on July 13th. This footage has never been released to the public, and it has been edited to show relevant parts. The video, as you will see from the timestamp in the upper right-hand corner, begins at 18:08 or 8 minutes after 6 p.m. In the first 12 seconds of the video, you will see a figure circled in red crossing the roofs of multiple AGR buildings. This man is Thomas Crooks. You will then see the patrol car begin moving toward the AGR buildings, and we lose sight of Crooks, but about 19 seconds into the video, he reappears. Again, we have circled him in red before we lose sight of him at about 20 seconds later. Now, we cut the video for length so it picks up at about a minute and a half later at 6:10 p.m. and 38 seconds. Here you will see law enforcement around the AGR building. At this point, all law enforcement entities staffing the rally are aware that there is an individual on the roof of AGR, but they do not know he is armed. Behind the trees, you will see one officer attempting to lift another officer up onto the roof, and you will see that officer pull himself up and look to the left. According to that officer's interview with the task force, he sees Crooks with the long gun, and Crooks turns and points the weapon in his direction. The officer then falls to the ground, injuring his ankle, and radios that the man on the roof is armed at 11 minutes after 6. That portion of the video ends here. We know that the first shot from Crooks is fired just 32 seconds later. We will play the video now. This will take about 51 seconds. I realize it's hard to see some of this, but so Crooks, as he makes his way across the roof, this is, by the way, a Pennsylvania State Police cruiser, and it has the dash cam. So you were able to see some things that nobody else was able to see, but I know it's difficult. Lieutenant Harold, I'm going to direct the first line of questioning to you, since this is state police footage. Footage and evidence show that Crooks was on the roof of the AGR building for over 3 minutes before shots were fired. Lieutenant Harold, please describe those few minutes leading up to the shots fired from your vantage point.
My position when the shots were fired, I was behind the stage. I can't answer to any questions regarding Mr. Crooks on the roof because I did not have that information. I was behind the stage. It was very loud, and if it was transmitted over our portables, I did not hear that. But I had returned to my car briefly once the former president had taken the stage to retrieve a cell phone that had FirstNet, and then I was returning back to the stage when the first shot rang out.
Officer Blasco, same question.
At that time, I was at Brady Paul, and I was working my way over to the AGR building to assist other Butler Township units with looking for Crooks. As I got to the water tower, I parked underneath the water tower and began to make my way to AGR. That's when the shots rang out.
Thank you. Commander Lenz, you were reportedly the first person to call out shots fired over the radio. Were you aware that someone was on the roof or that he was armed prior to the shots being fired? Also, please describe those few minutes leading up to shots fired from your vantage point.
For the first two questions, yes, I was aware through radio traffic that there was somebody on the roof and also that he was armed. The first report that there was somebody on the roof came on a different radio channel than the tactical units were operating, which would be PD Ops 3, and that transmission at 18:08 and 20 seconds is somebody's on the roof. At 18:09, I made a phone call to the PSP sergeant in the Secret Service Command Center and relayed the information that there was a suspect on the roof of the AGR building. There was some additional radio traffic from the Butler Township police units, and at 18:11:03 hours on that PD Ops 3 channel, again, not the channel the tactical units were operating, is the Butler Township unit that reports he is armed. I believe he says, I see him, he's laying down, and he has a long gun. So my actions for that, at that point, the gentleman on the roof clearly is a threat, and I radioed to our quick reaction force to deploy them to the AGR complex to begin to address that threat. prior to me finishing that radio transmission, you can hear the shots being fired through my open microphone.
Okay. You know, I have a problem going back to the actual sighting of Mr. Crooks more than once, and way before 11 minutes after 6. I think that one of the things is the panel has heard from different people at different times is of the thousands of people that were on the grounds that day, there is repeatedly one person that keeps standing out in the back and forth, all the different communication. And it is, in fact, Thomas Crooks that they're talking about. So we knew there was somebody that was very suspicious. We also knew there was somebody that we weren't able to actually come in contact with, and we kept losing contact with him. We saw him with a rangefinder. We saw him doing things that were not probably in line with what people go to a rally for. And I think that I'm constantly going to be wondering at what point did somebody say, we're not sure the area is secure and safe? There's enough understanding before that. The way you all responded, I think, was incredible. I want to thank you for that, but I still can't understand. Of all the different people that were on the grounds that day, thousands of people, there's only one consistent person that they identify, and it is ultimately the shooter. So I don't believe the grounds were safe and secure that day. I'm just trying to understand is what it was or what it would have taken for somebody to say, keep Mr. Trump inside until we clear this up. Well, Commander Lenz, because you and I have had not just minutes but hours together, and a couple of days we'll be going a deep dive to what happened. Do you feel that the Secret Service adequately prepared you and your men for July 13th?
I believe I can answer the tasks that they had given us, which would be to provide 2 counter-assault teams, 2 sniper teams, and a quick reaction force. We were certainly prepared for the missions that they had given us. There were additional things, obviously, that probably needed covered, but they never asked us to do that. They never tasked us with that. So given what they specifically asked us to do, we were certainly prepared to do that.
Okay, so you did what they asked you to do. But looking back at it now, the question is, did they clearly identify what it is that they expected of you or what you could have been responsible for? Mr. Blasco, same question.
So I took my direction from Commander Lenz, and of the things that we were asked to do from my direction from Commander Lenz for the pre-planning stages for the sniper teams, I would feel that I did what was requested of me from Commander Lenz.
Okay, so hindsight's always 20/20. Looking back on that, do you think you were adequately prepared for what it is that ultimately happened?
There's always things that you think that you can do better, but with the information that we had, I believe that we did the very best that we can, or we could.
Lieutenant Harold, you feel the Secret Service adequately prepared you and your men for the event?
The Secret Service, after meeting with them at the site and going through what they requested PSP to do, was primarily the security of the farm show inside the fence line. So adequate troopers, I had 30 troopers inside that fence line once the motorcade arrived, and I feel that with them being the lead and we were in a request assist function, we provided what they asked for and we secured the inner perimeter of the farm show grounds.
Yeah, I think with local law enforcement, I think you did everything that you were tasked to do that day. But looking back and looking at the game films and say, you know what, there probably were other things we should have been clued in on that. Just to ask all of you, when did you first meet with Secret Service and understand what your role was going to be that day? Looking at July 13th and working backwards from that Friday, Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, when did we get together to find out what we should do that day?
So for Butler ESU, our first contact from the Secret Service was Friday, July 5th at 1:55, and that was a phone call asking for assistance with the upcoming Butler rally. We then had a police planning meeting that was on July 8th, 2024, in Allegheny County. And during that meeting is where they relayed the information specific to their request. And at that point for Butler ESU, that was 2 counter-assault teams and a quick reaction force.
Commander, tell me, where did that meeting take place?
I believe it was the Allegheny County Emergency Operations Center. I could not be there that day. I was actually teaching an active shooter class in Erie, and one of our deputy commanders went to that meeting.
Okay. Mr. Blasco.
So again, we took, from that meeting, we took direction from Commander Lenz and the deputy commanders and team leaders, and we started to formulate a plan of what to do. But the first interaction that I personally had with the Secret Service would have been the July 11th walkthrough at the farm show grounds.
Actually on the site?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that was my question. I know that you were in Allegheny County when they're getting ready for this, but who actually walked the site, saw what it was that needed to be done, and had determined a lot of things, including where the perimeter should be? I would think that would be I would supposedly that there would be a lot of coordination between the local law enforcement, the Secret Service, and Homeland Security, who visited that day, to prepare for that event. I want to thank you all for being here today in your testimony. I'm now going to have Mr. Crow has his turn.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Sullivan, I wanted to start with you for a moment. I served in the Army before coming to Congress, and one of the principles of operations, as Mr. Blasco, I'm sure, is familiar, is you have to have unity of command and you have to have effective communications. Without unity of command and effective communications, a unit cannot operate. So one of the things I'm struggling with is this idea that there wasn't a single unified command station on site. The Secret Service did not establish that. Is that atypical in your experience? Would there normally be one command and control station to unify command and communications?
Yes, that's very atypical. I am very surprised. Normally, there will be an overall command post for the entire visit. Then each site will have what's called the security room, where radio traffic pertinent to that individual site is controlled. And the command post, the overall command post, should be the state, local police, Secret Service, and other federal partners that may be assisting. So this is very unusual, that the way it turned out here at this site.
Do you have any sense in this instance as to why that might occur? Are there instances where when you're conducting an event, you would do multiple command posts, or can you not see why that would be the case?
Well, it's a misnomer, Congressman. The multiple command posts, the Secret Service always has security rooms at individual sites, and they may be termed a command post, but it's really a mini command post. There should be just one overall command post, and each site has their own kind of communication center where information relative to that site will be transmitted. For example, the airport agents or security there really are not concerned what's happening at the other sites because they're only concerned about the airport. So there'd be a security room just for the airport site.
It's probably safe to say that time and speed is really important, right? Because the idea behind that, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but the idea behind that is if there's something identified as being wrong, a suspicious person, that has to be very quickly communicated, right?
Yeah, this is how it should happen. The protective detail is on one specific frequency, Secret Service frequency, and only the protective details on that frequency. The post standers are on a second frequency, and the tactical teams are on a third frequency, but the other tactical teams monitor all 3 frequencies at the same time. So if something happens, it's at the security room's responsibility to immediately go on the radio on the details frequency and say, there's an issue, remove the protectee from the stage or cover and evacuate. That's what's supposed to happen. And that's what's drilled into every Secret Service agent. There has to be, because the detail agents, don't forget, they can't listen to all the other traffic. They have to be rock solid on protecting the president or the presidential candidate. So their frequency is just for their individual movements.
So in this instance, based upon what you know and what you heard from Commander Lentz and Mr. Blasco, a suspicious person was identified with a rangefinder. Pictures were taken of this person moving around a building, so much so that it drew the attention of one of the sniper teams who took pictures of it. If that information had been effectively communicated to the FBI, or if the FBI, I guess to rephrase that, had set up a communication system and a command post to receive that information, would that have been a situation where you would say the protectee shouldn't go on stage until we resolve this?
Congressman Crow, you mean the Secret Service, not FBI? Shift agents should have been told there's an issue, we're working a suspicious person. And then at that point, it was probably would be inappropriate to remove the president from the stage, but the detail leader should know there's an issue, I may have to react quicker. So at a minimum, when there's a suspicious person, the detail leader and the shift agent should be told there's an issue.
And in your experience, have there been situations when you've been on service as a Secret Service agent where that has come up, where you've had to, pause an event or respond to something until it's been addressed?
Yes, that has happened during my career. I've never had a dramatic situation where we had to remove the president from the stage, but we've had situations where the shift agents are told, we got a situation, there's a suspicious person in the front row. And then you have to mitigate that. Usually the protective intelligence team will then come, take that person and conduct an interview, remove that person from the rope line, as an example, and you don't have to take the president off stage or interrupt the president's movements.
I want to turn briefly to the effective deployment of snipers. So Acting Director Rowe explained to this task force that it is best practice for the Secret Service to position counter snipers from the vantage point of the protectee looking out. And in fact, in this situation, that is where the Secret Service sniper teams were. They were sitting above the platform looking out. The employment of the local law enforcement, the Butler County ESU sniper teams, was outside looking in. So not looking at rooftops, not looking at lines of sight or lines of fire, but their mission, as they were told, was to look at the crowd, and a crowd of several thousand people, and to try to identify issues within the crowd. Is that atypical?
I don't know, Mr. Crow, if that's atypical. I'm very familiar with the our counter-sniper operation, the Secret Service, and that they do set up their position for a line of sight to the stage, show a potential assassin, what type of shot can a potential assassin make against the president, and counteract that. Generally speaking, the observation of the crowd is the responsibility of the post standers or police officers that are posted in the crowd. Because the theory being, everyone in that crowd has already been screened. So it would be very difficult for someone to get a weapon inside the secure area already.
So the idea that there would be, a gunman, not to say that it's not impossible, but there would be a gunman in the crowd, that a sniper at a distance would be able to identify and take an effective shot, seems very unlikely.
It seems highly unlikely, in my opinion. Again, the threat at that point, from the counter-sniper perspective, is outside the perimeter, in the area that is outside where the magnetometers are set up. And that's the reason why you have the counter-snipers. Because the theory being, inside that perimeter, the people have already been screened, and to a high degree of certainty, there is probably no weapons inside the secure area.
Thank you. Commander Lenz and Mr. Blasco, did that mission seem unusual to you, that you were outside looking in at a screened crowd?
It did not. We didn't receive any direction from the Secret Service as far as how they wanted our sniper teams to deploy or what their actual mission would be. So our snipers on our normal missions, they deploy more as marksman observers. So
what was, what was your mission as you understood it that day?
As we understood it, it was to deploy sniper teams to overwatch the stage, the crowd, the venue area where most of the people would be gathering.
Mr. Goldschmidt, are you still with us?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Just one brief question for you. Was the autopsy that you performed, was that, in this case, was that a standard autopsy in your view? And what I mean by that, was there anything that stood out to you as unusual or different? Was there anything in the toxicology that stood out to you as unusual or different, or did it all appear to be a standard autopsy?
It was a standard autopsy. The only thing that will be different was we did a little bit of extra toxicology testing with a heavy metal screening with a slightly elevated lead level. But other than that, the fact that there were FBI members and Pennsylvania State Police members present, it was a standard autopsy.
And pictures were taken during this, it was documented, so any markings in the body, tattoos in the body, that would all be evident from your report?
Correct.
And so slightly escalated lead levels, but nothing else that stood out?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.
Thank you. Now I'm going to recognize Representative Joyce from Ohio for 5 minutes. Mr. Joyce.
Thank you very much, Chairman Kelly. Lieutenant Harold, a lot of discussion, I think, will take place today about the advanced planning that took place. And my understanding is that from your testimony here is that you were involved in most of those day-to-day meetings leading up to this event and at the event with the Secret Service. Is that correct?
Sir, yes, sir.
And so could you go through that? Like, what was the first day you met with them, and then what did you discuss? And did the Secret Service, to your understanding, when they come in and take over a site, they're in charge of the site, and then they're helping, you are assisting them, and they're telling you, you tell them where people are going to be, the local folks who they're going to be, and they're basically in charge and know all those things ahead of time, where everyone's supposed to be, correct?
That's correct.
Did you have the opportunity then to understand that when the Secret Service came in, that they were telling the local folks, this counter sniper group, and I believe Mr. Blasco, that it was at the end of the day, it was the Beaver County sniper team that was in the AGR building?
It was both Beaver and Butler, sir.
Okay. Did Secret Service ever talk to the Beaver County sniper unit?
Not to my knowledge.
And they were there that day in charge of this operation. Secret Service never talked to them?
Correct.
Thank you. So going back to you, Lieutenant Harold, the day of or day before the event, do you have a walkthrough with the Secret Service?
I had 2 walkthroughs at the site. There was a walkthrough on Tuesday. It was just a brief to get familiar with the property. We went back to the barracks. We pulled up an image of the farm show on a smart screen TV. We drew the fence line, spoke a little bit. The main meeting at the site was Thursday, and it was with the same 3 Secret Service agents. I was with 2 other PSP commanders. We walked the site starting at the main gate. We went clockwise around and looking at my ops plan, wherever there's a dot or a number, that was a stationary patrol. And then basically when we got near the end and I had everything that they had requested, I was informed by my Area 1 commander that if we needed additional troopers that we could pull from surrounding troops. But after the request and the assignments that was given to us from Secret Service, I had plenty. I covered all the posts, and I had additional roving troopers inside the venue. So that was primarily the main meeting that we had with Secret Service was on Thursday, and then I completed the ops plan and had it forwarded out by 1,500 hours on Friday.
So that was 2 days before the event. No walkthrough the day of, no walkthrough the day before.
There was no walkthrough. I spent a little bit of time there Friday evening. There was an incident between Secret Service and the campaign. I was on my way home. I live across the street from the farm show, so I stopped there to see what the issue was. I ended up staying there until about 8:30 p.m. that night. So I did have some other interactions with Secret Service there on Friday, and then even some early communication with the campaign and Secret Service the morning of and during the event on July 13th.
What was the issue?
The issue was there was a campaign. We didn't know who it was at first. There was a vehicle that was parked, and one of the Secret Service agents had approached this person, and I think the individual was rude to the Secret Service agent and then got out of the car and walked away. So I had a trooper there go up to the PA system, page the registered owner of the vehicle, and I gave them so many minutes to return to their vehicle or I was going to tow it.
Okay. So. Mr. Sullivan? Were you ever personally on a presidential protection detail?
Yes, sir, for 4 years.
Okay, when was that?
It was 2 years with President Reagan and 2 years with First President Bush.
Oh, God bless. What kind of training did somebody on a PPD have?
We had extensive training. We came through the normal Secret Service training, Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, the Secret Service Training Center in Beltsville, Maryland. Then, before you got to the presidential detail, you had to do a series of field office assignments, investigations, and protection assignments, assisting on advances. And then when you got to the Presidential Protection Division, you had to have a minimum of 6 or 7 years experience, which is what I had when I got there. And then once you're there, we had training at least once a month. We had to shoot our firearms once a month, and we went to Beltsville, the Riley Training Center, at least once a month for, we call them attack on principles, AOPs, where you'd go through routine and events that might happen, then all of a sudden you'd have an attack on the person who was acting as the president to test your response skills. So it's very, very intense training.
I appreciate that, sir. Our Acting Director Rowe has said that we need a paradigm shift, and we need to be changed from one of being reactive to one of readiness. Now, what does that even mean?
Well, I think it means that the Secret Service needs to shift how we do business, but I'll harken back to my testimony. To me,
Like shift, from back to all the work that was done to prepare you for President Reagan and President Bush to the lack of that work being done now?
no, sir, that's not what I mean. I think there's a certain, I don't know what words actually come to mind, but agents are exhausted now. The campaign really, really takes a lot out of them. And I think they don't have enough resources, Secret Service does not have enough personnel and resources to give people the breaks that they need. But also, let me say though, Congressman, when we say about the paradigm shift and going from a reactive mode to a readiness mode, it's really being proactive. And I'll harken back to my testimony. We
So
need.
when would you not be proactive when when you go out into a situation like that? You're always looking for points of attack, correct?
Yes, yes, from the physical protection aspect, but I'm talking the overall agency.
I'm talking about the physical protection. When you were in PPD, when you were out there on the field, if you saw somebody in the line of sight or the day before in a walkthrough and you saw problems with line of sight, what would you do?
I would have had those mitigated, or else I would have talked to the supervisor and said, it's not safe for the president to come.
Correct. How would you mitigate it?
You
you
could
have
have
banners at that
banners, you could have buses, you could have trucks. There are a lot of ways to mitigate it. But however, to me, the simplest way to mitigate the building there outside the fence line in Butler was to post it. If you had police officers on the outside of the building, or agents, no one could have got up to the roof.
My understanding is that there was some type of vehicle that was supposed to be posted there to block that line of sight. When you came out and you were in charge and you didn't see the vehicle there, you still let the president come out?
Well, I didn't do the advance, and I don't want to
I
second
know,
guess the
I know,
people
but
there.
I'm asking you, since you're here on their behalf, I'm asking you,
Mr.
you
Joyce.
would have let the person come out?
Mr. Joyce, I would have taken the steps necessary. If I thought there was still a gap in the security posture, I would have taken the steps necessary, or I would have told the supervisors it's not safe to bring the president here. That's what I would have done.
Mr. Joyce.
Thank you very much. I know I
Thank you.
exceeded my time.
I wish we had a lot more time to do this. I mean it because I think you're onto something that we really need to know.
I'm
Mr.
not a
Correa, you
chairman,
are
so I
now
don't get
recognized
extra
for
time.
5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to welcome our witnesses today. You're all real-life heroes, and you acted with bravery on July 13th, and for that, I thank you on behalf of the American public. I'm also grateful that former President Trump was not seriously injured, but several families were. Their lives have been changed, and for them, I have nothing but my deepest sympathies. Mr. Sullivan, I want to turn to you first. I have a Wall Street Journal article from yesterday, and I'm going to submit this for the record, Mr. Chairman.
Objections.
And quickly summarizing some of the statements were made. Unclear chain of command, technical issues, poor communication, couldn't identify who within Secret Service was final decision maker, no communication in real time, 2 communication centers. Secret Service said they had technical issues with the radios, a problem that was characterized as being common with the agency. This is a summary of the Senate findings. And Mr. Sullivan, I just want to ask you a very brief question, which is, who's in charge at these sites?
It is crystal clear in my mind from when I was an agent. The site agent, the site advance agent, crafts his or her plan, presents it to the lead advance agent. Ultimately, the lead advance agent is personally responsible for signing off on the entire advance package, all the sites, airport motorcades.
So I'm going to ask you, you have at least three different elements here, three different groups that we're talking about here. We're talking about the Secret Service, local police, and the campaign.
Yes.
So the Secret Service is in charge
Secret Service is in
of
charge
all the above.
of security. No, not all the above, not the campaign, Mr. Carrera. It's only in charge of the security portion.
And I say that to you because some of the testimony here today, first of all, we don't have communication was totally lacking here. You mentioned there was a, one command center is generally the situation. Here you had two command centers that didn't talk to each other. You had someone in the roof spotted, 1609, call was made, suspect on roof with possible weapon. 1811, local police officer spots crooks, jumps off the roof, injures himself. 32 seconds later, you have a shot, goes off. Real time. You've been with the Secret Service, sir. You with President Reagan, I believe you said.
And President Bush, yes, sir.
Thank you for that good work. What went wrong? Who's in charge? And I'm not trying to say focus on you, but rather we have former President Trump going back to Butler here in the next few days. I'm not looking for people that are guilty here. I'm looking for solutions. What went wrong? How can we fix that moving forward?
Well, what went wrong here is there was a breakdown, and I'll explain one more time, Mr. Carrera. The site agent reports to the lead agent. The lead agent is responsible. He or she is responsible for the entire advance package, and then that's presented to the field office supervisor and the detail supervisor.
Are we being lax here? Because Secret Service is an elite group of Americans, done an excellent job of protecting our presidents. And here today, you described to me, who's in charge, at least for the locals and Secret Service and not the campaign. But is there somebody there who has the authority to say, this doesn't look good, pull the candidate off the stage, this situation is beyond my control, or it doesn't look good, cancel this thing, move to a safer ground? Is there somebody there that has the authority to tell all three elements, this is not good, let's move on?
Yes, the site agent and the lead agent, before the protectee gets there, could call ahead and say, it's not safe, do not let the protectee arrive. Absolutely. Once the protectee's there, if there's an issue, any agent, you don't have to be the detail leader, any agent can
I'm
go up.
running out of time, so very quickly, my last question would be, did that person in charge also review all of the communication and say, this is not working?
Yes, that was the lead
Pull the
agent's
plug.
responsibility. The lead agent,
And so there was a failure there by the lead agent.
well, I don't want to specifically say the lead agent, but in my opinion, it was probably the lead agent's responsibility to ensure the overall communication for the entire visit was appropriate.
And that was not the case.
Apparently not.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Correa. Now recognize Representative Walz, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I think I share everyone's condolences for the Compatore family, for the Copenhaver family, for the Dutch family that are dead and suffering because of these failures. And thank you all for your service. Every day you wake up and put that badge on to keep us safe. We appreciate you and we have your back. And I just want to let you know, as a veteran, when we come home, we depend on all of you, and I just can't thank you enough. Commander Lenz, Lieutenant Harrell, I want to take a step back again, back to the planning. and really the threat profile that President Trump is facing that is unprecedented in modern American history. Commander Lenz, Lieutenant Harrell, were you made aware that Iran has ongoing assassination plots against President Trump that are active and ongoing right now as we speak, including to the run-up?
No.
To July 13th?
I am not aware.
Was it ever discussed with you that an Iranian operative has transited Venezuela and was in the United States, according to FBI public notice made in March, recruiting hitmen to kill President Trump?
It was not.
Were you made aware on July 13th or on July 12th that day the FBI had arrested a Pakistani national, Mr. Merchan, with ties to Iran, putting down payments, actual cash, down payments to recruit hitmen?
No.
Were you aware that that same operative were recruiting women as spotters and recruiting protesters as a distraction? A fairly sophisticated plot being run by a foreign state actor intelligence agency.
No.
Not aware.
Mr. Sullivan, in your experience, would that change how you operated? Would that heighten your level of coordination, assets?
Absolutely, Mr. Waltz. It would be a tremendous game changer. But again, I hearken back to my statement here at the beginning. The current situation with the Secret Service not being mandated to have information provided to it is a problem. Now, the Secret Service should have been part of that overall investigation. The Secret Service should have been part
Secret
of the
Service
arrest.
should have been aware.
Absolutely.
And
They've been probably
certainly,
where they
had you been in charge, or in your experience, would certainly make local law enforcement aware, hey, we not only have ongoing plots, we just arrested someone in the United States putting down payments to kill President Trump. This is on top of the ongoing domestic threats, correct?
Yes.
You would
yes.
make your counterparts aware.
Yes, I would think those Secret Service headquarters knew about that. I'm assuming that. I don't know for a fact. But I've been in law enforcement my whole life. Unless you're in the room, unless you're one of the persons putting handcuffs on the suspect and bringing him in the room conducting the interview, you're never going to get the whole story. You have to be
But at
part
least
of that
in
arrest.
awareness, in fairness, just I have limited time, at least an awareness to your local law
Yes,
enforcement, right?
yes.
So were you also aware, was anyone aware that President Trump had been denied additional resources, but the reason the Secret Service counter sniper team wasn't there to coordinate with you is they were still pending approval at Secret Service headquarters. That's why the actual counter snipers weren't there to coordinate with you. Was anyone aware of that?
I was
But
not.
that they would be coming, maybe you should sync up, coordinate?
There was some discussion there, like I think it was on Thursday, that, because when you compare this to the 2020 rally, the Secret Service did not have a lot of the resources that was in Butler for 2020. And this event on July 13th, they seemed like they had a lot less resources. There was no CAT team. I don't think the CS team was coming at first.
That's right.
And early on, we had mentioned our CERT team, which is Special Emergency Response Team, utilizing them, but they felt that they were just needed in the motorcade.
So it was clear, heightened threat, you're not made aware, a lot less resources from the service. In addition, in terms of Secret Service post standards, 12 were allocated to Dr. Jill Biden's event in Pittsburgh, only 3 allocated there, making them highly dependent on you all. And in my time remaining, Commander Lentz, you said you were not given any guidance to secure the AGR building. Can you just talk about that for a moment? So essentially the site and the advance said, locals, you guys got this. Good? And was there any back brief? Was there any put assets here, on the roof, inside, post standards, anything at all?
So once we received our duties, so the Secret Service says, here's what we want you to do. And on Tuesday, I believe it was Tuesday, they did request some sniper teams from us, and later that day confirmed that their counter snipers were coming in. But there was no guidance as far as where they wanted us to be, aside from what those specific duties would be. The counter assault team leader was very good at making sure we knew what was expected. The counter sniper walked through with us at the planning meeting, so they knew where we would be. They knew what our plan was. They never requested a formal copy of our plan.
This was all verbal,
Correct.
right? And you never got any written guidance of how many assets to put where?
Correct. And it was our decision to place those snipers in the second floor of that AGR building. They were aware of that, certainly aware that they would be there, but there was no feedback or guidance that they wanted them there, that they didn't want them there. But really, by not raising an objection.
And Mr. Sullivan, should that guidance have been provided? in your
Absolutely,
experience?
absolutely. No question about it.
And if you had had additional Secret Service assets, would you have put the AGR building within the protective perimeter and the see-through chain link fence that anybody could have approached within yards of the stage? Would you have put that inside the perimeter with additional resources?
With additional resources, you could probably put that building inside the perimeter, but from my understanding, with the resources they had, the decision was made to put that building outside the perimeter. But it still could have been secured with post standers to prevent someone from getting on the roof.
So this was a lack of resources decision from Secret Service headquarters. If they had had it, you would have done it differently.
No, Mr. Walsh, I don't want to say that. I wasn't there, but if the Secret Service had the resources, it would have been easier probably putting that within the secure perimeter, and then everyone going into the building would have already been magged and screened. But, I mean, you have to take that on a case-by-case basis. Every site's different.
But at this point,
thank you.
you
Mr.
could go,
Mr. Walz.
thank you. You could go up to that fence without being magged or screened.
That's correct.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Dean, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank all of you for coming and being willing to assist us in trying to get at the facts of what happened, what went right, what went wrong. And I offer you my thanks for your service to community and to country, but I also want to say I'm sympathetic to your losses that day and the stress and trauma that it put on you and the entire community. I had the opportunity, I'm going to ask that the map be brought up. I and many others on this panel had the opportunity to do a site visit at Butler. Is that okay? Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, you don't have to hold it. Excuse me 1 second. Where's AGR? Right here. And what struck me, and I think most of us, was the proximity of the place, how close everything was. Again, I thank you for your service to our country and, of course, to the community that week and that day and continuing. Officer Plasko, this set of buildings at the top here, there are adjoined buildings, there's a separate building, there's a parking lot, there's a wooded area. What we see at the top, is that the AGR complex?
Yes.
Okay. How far are the AGR buildings from the red barns behind the stage, which I don't think are shown here? Red barns were here.
They are approximately 130 yards.
130 yards, okay? Is it your understanding that the AGR complex was left out of the secure perimeter by Secret Service and the plans in the rally, outside of that which was established by Secret Service?
Yes, that was our understanding of it.
You said, well, I know you were on the ground on the 13th in a patrol capacity, and your thoughtfulness of moving in so quickly is admirable to me. But you were there at the planning 2 days earlier, is that correct?
Yes.
On the 11th? Is it true that within minutes of joining the walkthrough on the morning of the 11th, you shared your concerns about AGR complex not being secure? Again, here's the top where Crooks was positioned and dies, and shoots from and dies. You shared your concerns about AGR complex. With whom and what did you say?
I did share my concerns with the agents, from my understanding, that were in charge of the site that day. I explained to them that the snipers inside that building were overwatching the venue itself, and that the whole area, specifically the whole area leading up from the water tower, we had no vantage point from. We could see part of the building that Crooks was on, but we had no access or line of sight, I should say, to that area. And I asked the the Secret Service members that we do not have the additional manpower to post anybody there, and I requested additional people to be posted there so there would be no access to those grounds,
And what response did you get?
that they would take care of it.
They would take care of it?
Yes.
And did you think that meant they would put it within their secured perimeter?
Whether they put it within their secure perimeter or they posted bodies, actual people there, that was my expectation of what was going to happen.
And I want to point out, for the benefit of those who haven't been there, this is a fence line for the AGR property, is that correct? And it's a chain link fence,
Yes,
so you can see through it.
yes,
And this property, AGR property parking lot, was not locked down. People could walk in and did walk in,
yes,
including Mr. Crooks. This is another chain link fence, I believe, with just the grassy perimeter.
yes.
Did they say anything about posting an agent or blocking, making opaque that fence line or both fence lines?
So we were told that they were going to post a opaque fencing along the line. In the military, I called it sniper fencing, but it's an opaque fencing that you can't see it. It's a green fence that what I know it to be, that all the way around the outside of the perimeter.
Mr. Lieutenant Harold, can you talk about whether or not there was a discussion about posting vehicles along either of those fence lines? Farm vehicles, trucks, buses?
On Thursday, well, even on Tuesday and Thursday, there was discussion about farm equipment that they were going to post. It was the campaign that was going to post farm equipment. And at one point, it was along the pond side of the stage, and then they were discussing about putting some farm equipment up above between the stage and the AGR building. So there was also a contact that was provided to the campaign about a resource that would be able to provide additional equipment to banners, trailers, some of the same equipment that was utilized in the 2020 rally. And so I had put the campaign in contact with this individual, so if they needed additional equipment along that fence line. And then there was also some discussion about, I think it was like, I guess you would say a jumbotron or something, like there was supposed to be a screen of some sort, you know, like blocking that area a little bit better. Saturday morning when we showed up, I think there was one combine that was between the AGR building and the stage, and there was a few additional tractors that was on the opposite side, on the pond side of the farm show there from the stage.
And Commander Lentz and Mr. Blasco, when Secret Service arrived, did anybody say to you all, well, we're missing some of the stuff we thought was going to be here, to block that line of sight?
When I arrived the day of the rally, I actually did not speak to anybody from the Secret Service until I had to make a phone call to the Secret Service specific to a possible threat that the 911 center received.
I thank you. I recognize I've gone over, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Again, I'll just go to thank you for your service, and it is stunning, the proximity of that rooftop and all of that property. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dean. Mr. Fallon, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lieutenant Harold, how long is the academy that you attended to become a Pennsylvania State Trooper?
Approximately 6 months.
And during that 6 months, how much time was spent on personal protection training or providing security at political rallies?
Very little.
Yeah, if not any, right?
Right.
Would that be the same, Commander Lenz and Officer Blasco?
Correct. There's,
Similar?
to my knowledge, none in the police academy.
Agent Sullivan, when you went through the academy training, was it 6 months like it is now?
The first school was 12 weeks at Glencoe, Georgia, and the second Secret Service was about 16 weeks.
Fair to say that about 5 to 6 of those weeks were spent on how to secure perimeters and things like that at political rallies?
Yes, it was
And personal protection?
the vast majority was protective intelligence investigations, protection.
Gotcha. And then when you actually went on a protective tour, it's about 5 or 6 years? That accurate?
You'd have to be an agent for at least 5 or 6 years before you could be assigned to protective detail.
Right, but a protective tour lasts about 5 years or so?
No, when I was an agent, it was between 3 and 4 years,
Okay, it's about 5 years now.
or more, yes, sir.
So fair to say, I think we've established that the experts in protection are the Secret Service and not local law enforcement. You do a lot of other things. to illustrate for the American people the abject historical failure of the Secret Service, because they're supposed to be the premier protective agency in the world, and on July 13th, they were anything but. And Helen Comparatori doesn't have a husband because of that. So when I visited the Butler farm, the Butler Farm Show and the AGR complex, two things struck me. The absolute, that proximity of the AGR building to where the stage was where President Trump was speaking, and also when you're on the other side of that very limp chain link fence, how much, I'm shocked as to how many people were milling about that didn't go through any magnetometers or any security checks. Officer Blasco, do you have any idea how many people were on the grounds that day on the AGR
On the
property?
AGR complex?
Yeah.
From talking to the sniper units in the AGR building, they said there was approximately 150 to 200 people.
Okay, so there were hundreds there. All right. And so, let me ask you this. Is the AGR property, it's outside the security perimeter, but there were hundreds of people 50 yards closer to the president than the shooter. We didn't know who they were. Commander Lenz, what's the highest structure in the direct proximity of the AGR building?
The roof of the second floor of the AGR complex.
But in the water tower.
In the water tower, yes.
The highest one. Did the Secret Service ask you all to post anybody up on the water tower?
No, they did not.
Okay. Would that have helped perhaps secure the area and mitigate the threat of the AGR building if we had somebody up there?
I think it would help secure the AGR complex.
Because you had a clear line of sight on it if somebody was up there, right?
Correct.
Yeah. But they didn't do that, did they?
They did not.
All right. Commander Lenz, as far as the walkthroughs, did the Secret Service perform a walkthrough with you all?
They did.
They did?
On Thursday, there was a police walkthrough.
Okay. And during that walkthrough, did they help you and advise you as to how to secure the AGR building?
They did not.
They did not. Lieutenant Harold?
Our walkthrough was Thursday, and AGR building was not discussed.
Wasn't discussed?
Yeah, we were inside the fence line of the farm show, and we picked they picked their stationary post where they wanted troopers assigned within the perimeter, and the AGR building was never discussed.
Okay, so we could have surrounded that building with, say, 8 or 10 officers, and it probably would have mitigated the threat the AGR building presented. Fair to say?
Yes.
And the Secret Service didn't ask you to do that?
No.
Okay. How about just clearing the area entirely? It's about 17 acres, but only about 4 or 5 of those acres have line of sight to where the president was speaking. Did they ask you to maybe put up some stakes around the perimeter, police tape, no trespassing? They asked you to do that?
No, I knew AGR, I knew the parking was restricted that day. The business was not going to allow parking, but there was nothing, no other communication regarding the AGR.
If the AGR property had been cleared with police tape and some, don't trespass and nobody other than law enforcement walking about, would that have helped secure the area and mitigate the threat of the AGR building presented?
No, it would have, but I know that they were going to sweep the farm show, so I'm not sure if that area was swept by Secret Service or not. I have no knowledge of that.
We know that there were hundreds of people that didn't go through any security checks that were milling about on that property that day.
Outside the
Presented
fence is
a grave
correct.
threat, and we just got lucky in that regard.
Yes, sir.
Do you think that, I'd say Lieutenant Harold again, were law enforcement stationed on the roof of the AGR building? Did the Secret Service ask you to put people on the roof?
PSP was not asked to put anybody on the
Okay.
roof of the AGR.
Commander Lenz, were you asked to put anybody on the roof?
We were not.
Officer Blasco?
No.
No. But if there had been law enforcement on the roof, probably wouldn't have had a shooter on the roof. Fair to say?
True.
Yeah. How about drones? Agent Sullivan, to the best of your knowledge, were drones deployed that day to help mitigate the threat that the AGR complex presented?
Mr. Fallon, having not been there, it's my understanding they weren't. The Secret Service had some technical issues with the drone. That's my understanding from public knowledge.
Lieutenant Harold, if cameras had been placed on the AGR roof, would that have helped mitigate the threat?
That would have.
Where the Secret Service didn't place any cameras to your knowledge, did they?
Not aware of any cameras on the roof of the AGR building.
There's about 7 different ways the Secret Service could have secured that building. A 10-year-old looking at that satellite image could have seen that the greatest threat posed to the president that day outside the security perimeter was the AGR building and that roof. And a 20-year-old with a week's notice figured it out and outsmarted and outmaneuvered the entire U.S. Secret Service, and that is a shame and it's a stain on their agency. And the best way to prevent these from happening is you don't react to them, you prevent them in the first place. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. Ms. Houlihan, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us today. I want to join my colleagues in thanking you for your service. I, too, served in the military, and so I'm enormously grateful for the safety and security that you provide all of us when we're home. My questions are going to be focusing primarily on communications and radio protocol, and so I'm confident or somewhat confident that I know to whom to direct these, but if you have any insider input into it, please feel free to chime in. I want to start with Mr. Sergeant Lentz. Understand that you are the commander of the Butler County Emergency Services Unit, and as commander, my understanding is you were in the local command trailer, along with your deputy commander and representatives from the Butler County Sheriff's Department and the Butler Township Police Department, as well as, of course, the emergency services on that day. Meanwhile, my understanding is that the Secret Service security room included representatives from the Secret Service, from the state police, and also from the Butler County Emergency Services. Just to start, is that a fairly accurate portrayal of who was where then?
Yes.
Perfect. Can you describe then some of the radio frequencies that were used by those various agencies? And I'll start with the Butler Police Department. What frequencies were they operating under?
Sure. So the Butler Township Police Department was using a channel we call PD Ops 3, which was an operations channel just for the township units performing traffic control duties. The tactical police units, we were using PD Ops 4, and the sheriff's office was using the sheriff's operations channel.
And my understanding there were also frequencies 1 and 2 for units that were not working at the rally as well. Is that correct?
Correct. PD1 is for patrol units that would cover the southern part of the county, and PD2 would be the northern part of the county.
And were local officers able to listen to other radio frequencies that day, other than the ones that you just outlined?
No. So we were able to hear our Butler County channels only.
And could you talk a little bit about the state troopers as well? What frequencies were they listening to?
The only thing I can really speak to on the state police radio is we did have one in the county command post. It was a